In this episode of Supply Chain Unlocked, Delano Collins and I explore the complexities of supply chain management, the importance of building relationships, and the evolving role of technology, particularly AI, in enhancing business efficiency. We discuss personal growth through continuous learning, the challenges of transitioning to managed services, and the critical nature of communication in leadership. The dialogue also delves into cybersecurity's impact on trust within supply chains and the necessity of adapting processes as businesses scale. Ultimately, the discussion emphasizes the need for proactive strategies in navigating the modern business landscape. Without further ado, let's get into it.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming.
All right.
Welcome back to Supply Chain Unlocked, where we talk with operators, founders, and technologists who are actually solving problems inside complex supply chains, as well as we found on this podcast. We veer away from just the supply chain because if the chemistry is working really good, we might get off onto some little personal stories. For instance, like cutting down trees on open land. Sorry, guys, that was a little pre-podcast conversation we had. Today, I'm joined with Delano Collins from Electronic Office. Delano, welcome to the show. Did I pronounce your name right?
Got it, Teddy. Thank you.
He corrected me before the podcast, folks. So I brought you on to this podcast. Two things. We found you on, or James Marley, a co-worker from, I don't know, 15 years ago. We collaborate on many different supply chain things. He saw you on LinkedIn. I liked your profile. I looked into Electronic Office, and then I listened to one of the podcasts you were on. I liked the way you talked about technology. More than that was how you evolved through your leadership roles and how people were at the center of all of that and how you help people progress in their careers or emotionally, all of those things that help out people. I really liked the way that was your mindset with helping people. And then the last thing I'll say is you do it in a way that it's not vanity speaking like I hear from a bunch of executives. It's like you got this down to earth thing. Maybe that's because you're from like Southern Georgia where you grew up. Maybe not. Don't know. But tell us a little bit why you're here. I can just tell you that's why I brought you on.
Well, thank you, Teddy. I probably get a lot of that from my father, who was both a pastor and orthopedic surgeon, known for his bedside manner. But I personally enjoy talking about getting stuff done. And that in our line of business means you've got to build relationships. As someone who spent 11 years as a CIO and I'm currently a chief operating officer, it all starts with building relationships, whether that's internally or with our vendors or with our clients. I've got to understand what the problem is we're trying to solve and what I have to work with. And you've got to be able to talk to people first. And people are the most essential part of the equation. And, your ability to define the problem really impacts your ability to solve the problems. Talking and your ability to communicate are really your core tools, no matter what we're doing in this service industry. So it starts there. So I've learned, hopefully, and am continuing to learn to communicate better. My wife would say I've gotten better at it over we're in our 21st year of marriage. So hopefully she says that I'm getting better at this, but I like to think that I am. It's definitely a critical skill in what we do, especially as technology is accelerating business and it feels like things are moving faster than they ever have. Back to why I'm here. I enjoy this business. I enjoy people in this business. And I love this combination of people, process, and technology and trying to get the right pieces and the right parts and the right processes and getting people together to solve them, in the right way.
Gotcha. So let's go back to your story from where you got started, how you ended up in the MSP business, managed services business. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about.
Sure. So I really, I met my wife at a bank and we wanted to get married and We weren't both allowed to work in the same office, and so one of us had to leave, and she had more tenure, so I decided it needed to be me. So I went to go work at a break fix company, and I had a lot of skills at remoting into systems to get them fixed. And so when I went to go work at this company, they put me in a pool with a bunch of other engineers, and basically we had to fight over billable time. Well, while other engineers would go get in a van to drive somewhere to go fix something, I figured out a way to remote into that network and fix it. So all of a sudden, I was delivering services, on request, and so clients didn't have to pay for travel time and didn't have to wait for someone to schedule themselves to travel. They would request something. I would figure out how to remote into their network, fix it right then and there, confirm it was fixed, and then move on to the next thing. So all of a sudden, I changed our business model, and all of our clients started requesting me to fix all of their problems, and I became the bottleneck in the business. So the business had to change to reflect a new way of delivering service, which became managed services. And we were able to basically get clients to pay a fixed fee for an unlimited amount of fixes. And then I basically taught other engineers how to deliver services remotely. And we essentially became an early managed service client or
AK,
company.
AKA a game changer right there. You
Yes.
just brought in efficiency and effectiveness. It's dropped cost, right?
Yes.
So no, yeah, no, that's key. What was the next job or business that you evolved to?
Well, from there, I became a terrible manager because I went from an engineer to a manager, and I tried to micromanage people. And I thought, well, I'm going to do the hard stuff while everybody else does the easy stuff. And I became the bottleneck in the process. And I learned a lot of critical but terrible lessons in people and processes. And I realized that a lot of things needed to change, and those were primarily me and my management processes. And I decided I was going to try to fund myself to go to school. And thankfully, I had some people who cared enough about me to tell me, don't waste your money with an MBA. Here's a book to read. Here's another book to read. And here's another book to read. And there's some wonderful books out there that can teach you more than you could ever care to know about being a wise leader. And I started a journey which I have never stopped, and I became an insatiable reader because I wanted to learn how to better manage myself, better manage other people, and bring more value to the business. Part of it was altruistic. I wanted to be a better employee, but also my wife and I were starting to have sons, and I have 3 sons now, and I needed to be able to be a better provider. So I knew I needed to ask for more money from the company, but I needed to provide more value to get more money. And so how was I going to be a better value to the company? Well, I recognized I was in a managerial position. If I could organize our resources in a way that delivered more value and brought in more revenue, then I provided that value to the company. And so I enjoyed the challenge of being a manager and trying to organize people in a way that helped them grow and helped me grow and helped the business grow, and working with leadership to understand what our goals were, and then not only meeting but exceeding wildly every type of financial goal.
Two things there. One on education and books, and I'll just give you my quick education. It took me till I was 37 years old to finish an undergrad, and it was University of North Carolina. Girl. Everybody in North Carolina thinks just if you say UNC, it had to be Chapel Hill, but it was Greensboro.
Right.
Finished a 4-year degree in business school, specifically in entrepreneurship, focused on corporate business. And really, what that means is you take an idea, you take it all the way through the process to market, and that's really the basis of all that. Why am I telling you that? Everybody throughout my life just said I had to finish that degree. I finished the degree and nothing changed. And the next thing was, and then a lot of people always say, you got to get an MBA. And I did horrible on the GMAT because I thought they were just going to like let me in. I'm going back to the same school for the same stuff. Just let me back in the door and we'll call it an MBA. And I knew the dean pretty well, my wife and I. And the point was that he sat me down and he says, you've already got the education. Did that change your life? And I said, no. did it change your revenue? And I go, no, because he's speaking like a business right here.
Right.
And his name's Dr. Gargea. Anybody in and around Greensboro knows this dude. And he goes, you are wasting your time going to getting an MBA. You're much better off using your education that you already got, but never stop reading business books. And here's why: management and supply chain and everything else in life continues to evolve. Getting an MBA with the same information is not going to buy you anything else. And I
Agreed.
really went, that was so like eye opening to me. So I'm an avid reader as well. And I think a lot of people in and around business are realizing that college only goes so far. It's your ability to network, your ability to understand people, etc. I didn't mean to take that much time telling you that little story, but
Yeah.
we're on the same page by all
Yeah.
means. I'm not saying don't go to freaking college. I'm not saying that before I get all these mean comments about anti-education and the. But anyways, so when you look at that, the other part is I found the same thing when I became a manager. I was the bottleneck, and that is a tough pill to swallow. And you know where I realized it was reading business books. Had nothing to do with my education. Well, the education helped out, but it was continuously reading books, being a servant leader. When you're a servant leader, you realize help people, teach them how to fish, right?
Yes.
And then they can move on their own. Otherwise, and when they do, get out of their way and let them strive. And frankly, I heard those words out of you just now. And obviously, it's consistent because when you were on that other podcast, you had the exact same story. Sorry.
Yeah. I was very fortunate. I went, my undergraduate was, I had 2 majors in psychology and computer science, and I was not able to find, I got a job, building computers and selling computers at a small shop, but it wasn't anything that, to write home about. But I went back later and went to a tech school, and it was filled with Army veterans who were there on their GI Bill. And
Yeah,
there was a sense of urgency there with the veterans there because they had limited funds from their GI Bill, and the maturity with which these veterans brought to the classroom. They were used to like getting up early, and they were used to paying attention and being very serious about it. And this was a Cisco Academy, and it required a high level of due diligence. You better come prepared, and there was a lot of labs. And being surrounded with people like that was really good for me because I really absorbed that atmosphere. I like being around that. I've never been around people who were that serious about something that I liked before. And I thought, how can I be more like that? Later, when I got the job that I wanted, first at a bank and then later at this IT company, I always emulated the work ethic of these Army officers that I had seen and worked with, side by side with in the Cisco Academy. And I thought, some people might be younger than me, they might be more certified with me, but they're not going to outwork me. And that's something that I've really tried to be serious about throughout my career. And it's a mentality that I was very fortunate enough to be, I guess, immersed in through that Cisco Academy that I'd never had in college.
that's a good point. Being around those folks help.
Yeah.
So I do have this question. So did you do a CCNA,
Right.
CCNP, or CCIE?
So I did CCNA and CCNP. I got my CCDA. I'd hoped to do my CCIE, but honestly, I was never that good at it. I never got enough hands-on experience with Cisco equipment to really think that I should start buying the equipment at home and start to work on my CCIE. Where I lived in Georgia, there just wasn't a lot of Cisco equipment, and the companies that I worked for
Oh,
didn't really buy a lot of Cisco equipment. But yeah, I guess I'll continue to run down this rabbit hole a little bit longer. When I was going to the Cisco Academy, my whole goal was like I just need to get my CCMP, and I'm moving back to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I had lived before then. And I was like, nothing's going to stop me. And then I met my wife, and
that'll do it.
yeah, 22 years later, we moved back to North Carolina. So three sons, and 22 years later, it just a slight deviation there in plans. Anyway, so it all worked out even better than I planned.
No, that's I always like that part of the story. Yeah, and guys, we still haven't touched on supply chain, but it's still a good conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Just wait, the best part is yet to come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What was the other one that I wanted to hit on? So how did you end up where you're at now, electronic office?
Okay, the short version of a much longer story is that I worked for the break fix company that I worked for turned into an MSP. I was the 13th employee there. Grew that company to 255 employees. We were acquired by private equity. I went from an engineer to CIO. Was CIO for 11 years there. And after my stint there, I decided to go be a consultant. And my role as consultant was to teach other companies how to grow their business and also help secure their business as well. So I worked with other MSPs. I was very fortunate to work with some of the largest and in fact two of the top 3 MSPs in the world. And through those relationships, I got to know Kemper Brown, CEO of Electronic Office. And as my wife and I started to really reflect on where we were at this point in our life, we started to think about, our boys and where we wanted them to grow up and where we wanted to retire. We've been vacationing each of the past 5 years in Bryson City, and it's a place where, the Nantahala river is. Our sons love
Yeah.
whitewater rafting, tubing, fly fishing. We just love the mountains. And our sons every year vote for that vacation. And so we thought, let's just do it. Like my wife and I wanted to move here. Our sons increasingly love this. Let's see if we can find a job up here. And so I called my friend and now my boss, Kemper Brown, and I said, do you know of anybody hiring up here? And that turned into an opportunity a couple months later, and we've been very blessed and fortunate to be here since September.
So with that said, I realize I had one other question here that matters. At what point do you realize how deeply IT reliability affects operations?
Of course, my opinion may differ from yours, or others, but technology is incredibly important to most companies because of how much we rely on technology to enter data for our users, how we log in, and then we rely on the security. We assume security and reliability and confidentiality of data, or the CIA triangle of that data. So most people don't realize how much assumptions underlie their technology. And if you look at supply chain breakdowns, really in the past couple of years, modern supply chains. Modern supply chain attacks don't break locks. They really break trust between systems. And so technology is incredibly critical. IT is incredibly critical. Cybersecurity and risk management is incredibly critical for supply chains today, more so than ever.
Huh. That was really, insightful or profound. When they break, it's a breakdown of trust.
Yes.
I want to
Yes.
think about that a little bit deeper because, yeah, you're right. I've been through 2 major cyber attacks with 2 different large companies, both on the retail side. And you want to say total unraveling of vendors, everybody go to their own little corners while you try to stitch everything back together.
Right.
And that's
Right.
just everybody, the trust has broke down, and it rightfully so because you don't know where the attack came from in those first few minutes or hours, and they need to go. And now they don't trust you because we've been so interconnected.
Yeah, I've worked many incident response as a CIO for a large MSP, and I've seen CEOs go lock themselves into their office, and it's like all their relationships are cut off, and they don't know who to talk to. It's easier to go establish a new relationship with someone they've not even worked with before, and bring in an untrusted party now because
Yeah,
all the trust relationships that they had are broken, does damage in ways that are almost irreparable when something happens. And so it's difficult to tell partners and prospects alike how much they need to prepare because of what can happen in the event of a cyber attack unless you understand the technology enough. And AI, I think this is a perfect topic for us. AI is uncovering weaknesses that even the most technical peers of mine are alarmed at. Like if you look at sales loft and authentication levels of breach, it requires people like I have a master's degree and 28 cybersecurity certifications. It requires people who are extremely technical to really roll up their sleeves and spend an incredible amount of time looking at layers. We've got to peel the onion at layers that we've never really had to do before. The business is trying to move forward so quickly to achieve some type of integration with AI so they can achieve a business outcome. And now we've got to look at APIs and test that. We've got to look at the data characteristics and like understand, well, what data is moving where? How is this third party vendor going to authenticate? We've got to understand the architecture of authentication now because that was the culprit in the sales loft vulnerability. It's like we don't know exactly where things could break down, so we have to start to peel the onion at every single layer and then understand the architecture. Look at the CrowdStrike, the EDR solution where they had the patching issue, where they basically pushed out like a bad patch and all the systems basically blue screened. Like who would have ever thought that was even possible? Like I can tell you that I know a lot of like brilliant people in the industry that never even thought to ask like, how are you testing your patches, CrowdStrike? Like we are so busy, like we don't even think about things like that, but people think about those things now, and we're relying on those types of things now. We assume that technology is going to work, and now when one small little flaw in our assumption brings our network to its knees, everybody knows about it. Like my wife was telling me earlier, we have a Verizon network, and Verizon 200,000 users, their phones went into SOS mode, and
True.
Verizon yeah, and Verizon engineers have spent all day scrambling trying to figure out why 200,000 users are no longer connected to their network. Like what that is a supply chain issue if you're relying on mobile connectivity. There's a lot that we have to know about our technology, especially as we're being pushed to integrate more to grow the business faster.
So we're a little early in my script, in my line of questioning for AI, but let's go there now. And when I start talking or we start talking on the podcast about AI, what I find from most of the C-level people, they still don't know what it is, and they have a very difficult time making decisions on where to apply it. Here's what I've part of what I've figured out why so many people are in this bucket, especially at the sea level area, has very little to do with age. What I find, a lot of people want to say that it has very little to do with that. What I'm finding is sea level or founders in a lot of ways are looking or listening to tech people, tech CEOs or sea level people, and they talk in very extremely broad terms that never get to use cases, specific use cases. They just say transformation automation. So now I'm finally getting to the question. With your customers, where do you see specifically maybe a use case example where your customers are applying AI in real terms?
So we still see our customers scratching at the surface and not really understanding AI. And they're asking us to help explain it for their business. And for us, it requires a lot of depth for us to go into their business and really look at and understand their applications. I think for us right now, we're only in a position right now to understand where we can use AI for ourselves, if that makes sense. I mean, it requires a lot of knowledge of your processes, and your processes have to be clean. Your data has to be clean, and you have to understand your compliance requirements. Once all that's done, then you have to understand what's available to you. Do you want to build it? Maybe, maybe not. If is there something off the shelf that's available to you, then you have to understand those solutions, and then you have to start to do a fairly thorough evaluation of those solutions and be able to map it into your existing processes. And so we're looking at solutions now that can plug into our ticketing system, look at all of our history of tickets, look at tickets as they come in, assign tickets to people, tickets or service requests. And so a service request comes in and it says, oh, well, there's actually been 74 of these service requests, and 29 of them were actually resolved by, I'm just going to make up a name, Bill, and Bill is not available, but 13 of the times Jill resolved them and she is available. So I'm going to actually move this ticket to Jill right now because she's been able to resolve them. More than that, it can actually look at tickets and say, I see 59 of these tickets, but AI can actually create an automation to resolve this. So we don't actually need to manually resolve this based on the ticket notes. I can create a script in your system that when this ticket comes in, I can, let's just, easy example. Someone needs their password reset. So I'm going to create a script that resets the password and then notifies the client through this ticketing system and says, okay, I've reset your password. Like, please go here to this link and you can now log in, just use this reset password link. That's a very simplistic example, but it now can script the remedy for the solution. There's other more complex things where let's say someone's on the network and they're experiencing issues, and it basically runs a series of tests on the network, and then it remedies the network issue and then notifies the person, okay, after running the remedy, it's now tested the network again and now confirms that the issue is resolved and lets the person know that the issue is resolved. So we're actually we've been evaluating this tool for quite some time, and probably in Q1 we will start to implement it. There are other solutions out there that are more specific in their focus, but this looks like a very useful tool that'll help us create more margin without increasing our price. It'll also help us deliver services faster and around the clock without adding headcount. And so for us, that's a huge win. It's important.
So
Yeah, and we have to do it
is that
securely
really,
as well.
sorry, is that really your buying point at that is really effective and efficiency for your current operation, not replacing heads?
I mean, we love our people. We don't want to replace anyone. We're evaluate. I think there's never a single mechanism that makes us make a decision, typically, unless we have a terrible solution and we replace it. But we don't have anything like that. We're not looking to cut people with AI. We're looking to deliver services faster, more consistently, with more margin, to create more margin on our contracts, because that means that we can reallocate those people to do other things. We are scaling our business, we're growing, and if we can add more if we can support more clients with the same number of people, that's a win for us and that's a win for our clients. I'm reminded of this conversation with the CEO of American Airlines, where the interviewer said, well, why don't you build a airplane with all first class seats? That's what everybody wants. And he said, that's not what everybody wants, because if it was, everybody would buy all our first class seats on planes, and they don't do that. And so with our clients, if you ask me what clients want, they want great service at low prices. And I think that's almost true in every industry. So we want to be able to deliver great services at very reasonable rates. But we need to have a win-win situation where the client's getting those great services and we're getting the rates that allow us to pay our employees, good salaries too. So we need to strike that balance.
And speaking to that point, when I continue to talk about effective and efficiency, as I work more with AI with different companies, there's always this, will AI drive up the revenue, or will it be able, through a more effectiveness and efficiency, be able to allow me to scale my business, reduce my prices, or keep my prices the same as other stuff goes on? Because so many people get stuck in their head, how do I replace heads? Or the people that do the work are worried about their jobs being replaced. And what I really want to get out on this podcast, where AI is today, without a doubt, is really in those two buckets: effectiveness and efficiency. And that's exactly what you described in both of those scenarios. Or you want to grow your business by bringing in more customers. And that's acquisition of clients, right?
Yeah.
You either do that cheaper or you get higher volume, or you're doing like what you're talking about.
Yeah. If you look at, if I think email marketing is the perfect example of an area where people try to fully automate it with AI, and it's terrible. I mean, you get these emails that look like AI created it, and sometimes you get a blank email that says something like as mundane as like insert body text body here. You're like, well, the automation works, because I got the email, but there's no content there, and that's not taking anybody's job anytime soon. And but AI, when I look at the ability to correlate a lot of data quickly, because a company like ours, we have a lot of clients, and then a lot of clients create even more tickets. If I can have AI like go through all those tickets in a few moments and then give me a pattern of, let's just say I want to pick out one customer and I want to meet with that customer this afternoon and tell them a narrative about, over the past year you've had this is your trend of tickets, these are the types of issues you've had, this is the most of your issues, your IT issues, were in this category, this category, this category. It happened from January to December in this trend. Like, it started like they were mostly application, and then it ended up it was mostly infrastructure. When I look at that, when I can tell you a story, I can tell you a narrative. Like, we were fixing mostly application issues. We got that under control. And now we're seeing infrastructure. When I peel the onion behind infrastructure, I see aging infrastructure. We need to go replace that aging infrastructure. If we don't do that, that's going to create some problems, that challenges, lack of resilience, downtime. AI can do that quickly. And could I get, a person can't do that as fast as AI can do that. And those are perfect use cases for that. And that creates more value for the customer. That creates a better, longer lasting relationship where the client sees, oh man, I partnered with the right company. That's exactly the kind of information. We're not just like fixing your stuff. We're also telling you, giving you consultative information about what's going on with your network. And going back to supply chain and the trust issues, if we're helping you understand what's going on, we're building a relationship. We're building trust, not eroding trust with the use of the AI in this equation.
Yeah, let me add, well, food for thought, or how do you feel about this? When you talk about tickets that are coming in from customers, you also have the transcript. Are there a lot of your folks, engineers, admins, people like that, since you're in managed services, are a lot of them either recording the calls or have transcripts of a call?
Yeah, so we have a phone system. The phone system has an AI component that actually tests sentiment. If someone's like, you know, you three-legged blankety blank blank blank, our phone system's going to be like, negative sentiment detected on a phone call, and send that straight to the manager. And so it detects an issue, and it can also detect like lack of confidence from our engineer on the phone, and notify the manager. Again, it's another area where we're using AI to help us detect issues that would I can tell you, I've been doing this for 21 years in the managed service space. These issues, unless you were within earshot of that person, even though we've recorded calls, over the decades, like, nobody had the time to go back and listen to those calls unless somebody was like, I talked to Fred on the phone and he was a complete dunce. And then
Yeah.
you went back and listened to the call. That was pretty much the only time you went back and listened to it, because you were too busy to listen to it. Now AI is like constantly listening to it and giving you a report of like what's going on the call, and you're like, wow, Fred did a great job. Or, Fred, let me bring you in here. I see you're on the phone with ABC company, and it looks like I'd like to talk to you about like what happened there. And so that gives us the ability to like coach in real time, and that's important for us to get better, because we want to be as close to like what's the old saying? Perfection is unattainable, but in the pursuit of perfection, we will attain excellence. And so
Yeah.
that's really our mentality.
Yeah. So where I would also like to extend on that a little bit. When AI, it doesn't even have to be a recorded call, it can just be a transcript. And it has amazed me, especially in my business, the amount of accuracy of it can go grab something like somebody used a swear word and that can notify the manager. All they know is a swear word happened and they can dial in right then.
Yep.
Or if it becomes a big issue, a
Yeah.
swear word's a little bit over the top, might just be sentiment. To go and find that actual recording, even 3 or 4 years ago was a pain,
Oh yeah.
and, very much for the manager where if something gets flagged as far as negative sentiment, you immediately know in the transcript and the call number or the ticket number, and all that work is taken off of the resource manager, and that is just with very minimal AI. So again, you're helping out those resource managers, and they may be able to grab that like as it's happening.
Yeah, you can even customize it and add like words like breach or anything that's relative to your business. You're like, I heard a word, I heard that word. If you're in sales, it might be another word. If you're in manufacturing it and you hear, I don't know what something that's relative to your business there, you can configure those words now with AI, and you hear that word, and boop, it triggers an alert. Boop, it triggers, a notification that goes straight to the right person, and they're like, we need to jump into this call right now. And we never had that capability before.
Yeah, I can for the audience in my business, and it's on the same. And this is more for maybe salespeople. Now that you triggered that a little bit there, what I'm watching with AI, and I have transcripts of the sales calls that I'm on. I may not be totally following the conversation, but I will always go to our sales call analyzer after every call and run it so it summarizes everything. And then it summarizes detailed points I need to think about. And where I'm going to go with all that, it's like having a debrief, as I always call it from the military. You go into a debrief, and when the entire team is looking at what happened on the mission or on the trip, whatever you want to call it, that it's like having a whole team meeting delivered to you in 20 seconds after the meeting and where you had a blind spot. And was it the sentiment? Was it the tone? Was it the decibel level? AI brings that to the table today, not yesterday, not 5 years from now. And that's why I'm extending more on this because C-level people within these organizations need to understand that it can be used today and get started for a very small amount of money because it helps the business. AI. So, what other areas of AI have you seen? A lot of conversation I've had in the last month has been around endpoints. When you're not hooked to a large language model, meaning the internet, or you need faster computation from an LLM. So the LLM sits on an endpoint. Have you worked with that at all?
I mean, we use LLMs. I mean, we use Copilot, we use ChatGPT, we have embedded essentially an LLM in a tool that we use. We also use there's AI components in our security tools that are doing analysis of logs and threats. Some of that's not necessarily cutting edge AI as people would expect. Um, it's more like it's looking for statistical analysis of something that might happen like 0.03% of the time, which is an anomaly in a business network. Those are the most common things that we utilize now. That will change. I mentioned the phone system, but we do have plans to utilize more in this upcoming year. We part of the plan that I have implemented is, and I go back to what I said earlier, AI will be a garbage in, garbage out tool, and I am a stickler to make sure that our processes are correct and that our data entry is on point before I implement AI. I've implemented as CIO an AI solution before, and I know that the first 2 weeks it goes into a learning phase, and I do not want that learning phase to start until I am 100% confident and I personally have gone through the data from stem to stern in our platform. And so we have an intentional roadmap, and that we'll be executing later in Q.
So, where do you see AI deployed with your customers as maybe a quick win for the audience that is trying to get their head wrapped around use case or a specific business case?
I
What have you seen the most or unique?
Well, the one that comes to mind because I was in a conference yesterday with medical managers is doctors and diagnostic software or medical diagnosis. And, I guess the ability to diagnose medical conditions is really dependent on the skill and knowledge of the doctor. But if the doctor has access to potentially a secure database, um, LLM that has other information, that doctor can um, you know, what's going on with the patient and get feedback or suggestions from that AI tool. And there's a lot of doctors are asking about this. The large hospitals are using this. The small medical practices do not have access to this right now, but all the doctors want it that we've heard from so far. And they're asking us, how can they get access to it? So that's, while we don't necessarily go out to the medical, software field and look around for them, that is something that we have a lot of clients in the medical field. They're small medical practices in the traditional SMB space. This is going to be an issue. We help companies with integration, so we're going to be, you know, in this with them in this year, next year. So stay tuned. There'll be more on this, but I can only see this helping in families with getting better treatment in the coming years.
Yeah, I'm going to say this on there for the heck of it. So, I got I got somebody that I work with at one of my clients, and her daughter's at UNC Chapel Hill in med school, and being in AI and everything. And I have so much more of uh, an exposure to the outside world. And then her and I talk about these things. And I said, I know you're not going to believe this, but the doctors, I think, are at risk. Doctors are at risk because the breadth and depth of the knowledge and the speed that AI can bring to you for a diagnosis is unbelievable. And that,
I'll tell you a funny story. So, having worked for a private equity company and being the son of an orthopedic surgeon, and my father passed away last month, but I had a chance to talk to a lot of his partners, and I know that private equity is buying a lot of medical practices. And if you spent a lot of time in the hospital, unfortunately, in the past year, and I know that that hospital is owned by a private equity company. And if you look at the ratio of doctors to nurses in that hospital, it's mostly nurses and not doctors. And having spoken with a lot of doctors, there's a lot of concern about private equity buying medical practices. And what I know from being in IT is that when private equity steps in, they're concerned about their shareholders, and they will make decisions about staffing and
yeah,
tooling. And that's not always in the best interest of the customer. It's in the best interest of the shareholders. And so if they will absolutely look at a tool like AI and ask, should we pay a doctor this amount of money, or should we go buy this tool which allows us to scale faster and deliver, you know, the same type of service that a doctor? And then, I mean, I would not be shocked if there becomes a diminishing number of employed doctors in private equity spaces and the workload gets shoved down on nurses and other medical support staff, because it's a model that looks on paper more scalable in a business model. And does it deliver better medical service? I don't know if it does. It doesn't feel like it does right now, but that's my 2 cents, and I reserve the right to be wrong. But again, I spent a lot of time in hospitals in the past year or so, and that's been my experience.
yeah. So I'll extend that a little bit more. So I very much pissed off my coworker. I call her my coworker, and she works for one of our client. And I didn't really piss her off because she knows that I was slightly probing, joking, because her and I have that relationship. And I said, why can't a PA do the doctor's work and that doesn't need a full medical school? Or better yet, why doesn't a nurse, because the nurse is there anyhow, if there's a transcript of the conversation, you're going to get a lot faster breadth and depth of knowledge from the world than that one human database walking around a hospital. And I said, that not that far off. And she didn't really engage in that conversation until like 3 weeks later. And she started using ChatGPT. And then she started seeing that very quickly because who provides the healthcare? Truly, the healthcare provider are the nurses. The PAs are the next one and the technicians. I'm not saying doctors are going away. There's still a huge thing.
Right.
But then bring it to your point, how healthcare and costs have to come down a lot. And is that where private equity steps in and starts making that work? To the audience, relax. We're just having spitballing some ideas because we're in the middle of this kind of conversations.
Yeah.
But that's another application for AI is just in that patient care. And do you get a better diagnosis? Having a internal LLM that is really the thinking of many doctors, nurses, all of that in the internal language model, large language model, and it's more holistic decision making. Is that really where AI goes?
Yeah, I can dial this back, to something that might not, upset people so much, but in the security space, you keep hearing like, oh, there's a shortage of security jobs, but in reality, there's a lot of highly skilled security people out there who are unemployed. The reality is they're looking for highly certified people who are willing to take low paying jobs, and so really they're looking for entry level people that they can basically arm with good tools and pay them a low rate. And so what you're seeing is offshoring of a lot of security or of a lot of SOC services because they can basically pay people in other countries low rates to go deliver those services and deliver them remotely. So you're basically getting the consultative high level approach at really low rates because they don't want to pay those. But the story is there's a shortage of jobs, but there's not. There's a shortage of a willingness to pay what people were paying 5 to 10 years ago. What was considered a good rate for a tier 3 consultative security expert. And it I know private equity has really stepped into that security company space. I don't see that model moving into other companies. So, as the father of 3 sons, you know, was it Mike Rowe with Dirty Jobs? I'm telling my sons, go be an electrician, a plumber. Like go get a job that nobody else can replace you with. At least if you want to do something else, you can always fall back on that job. But you can be your own boss, work your own hours, work as hard as you want, or make as much money as you want doing that. And if, like I said, go do something else if you want to, but at least you have another skill profession that nobody can take away from you.
No, that's a good point. Do you ever watch The Fat Electrician?
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, look up that dude. He started out as an electrician. I mean, he's like a super young dude, but he evolved his The Fat Electrician and the I can't think of his second YouTube channel, but he's huge now. And his whole point is when this whole thing goes in the shitter, I can still go back and pull cable. He always says that. Oh, he's The Fat Electrician is absolutely hilarious. Anyways, there's a plug for you there
All right.
to The Fat Electrician. All right. Real quick. Sorry, these are supposed to usually be 30 minutes, but the chemistry's working out here, man.
Right on.
No, bottlenecks. Sorry, I never even asked you. Did you have a hard cutoff time?
No, I'm
Did
good.
you? Okay,
I'm
cool.
good. Yep.
Bottlenecks.
Yep.
Where do you see bottlenecks in general? This is a very vague question, but I
Yeah.
think you know where I'm going is,
Yeah.
and where is AI solvable? And I think we've already pointed out was,
Yeah.
you got to know your process and you got to have clean structured data. But how does a C-level person go? We're not even going down that road because the data's crud. Or
Yeah.
two, it's just not repetitious, but it's a bottleneck and we accept that cost. Excuse me.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, the bottlenecks happen at middle and upper management. at some point it's processes, and at some point it's middle and upper management. The processes that it took you to get to 50 people don't get you to 100 people, and the processes that took you to get to 100 don't get you to 200, and the 200 don't get you to 500. At some point you've got to start thinking like, all right, what do I need to change to get me to the next level? And you've got to be thinking glass ceiling, and at least that's my mentality. Like, we got here, but like what do we got to change to get to the next level? And then and also in parallel, like, you have managers who are like, I've been doing this the whole time. Like, I'm not changing. Like,
Yeah.
those are the people, like, you're like, thank you so much. You've been so great for this organization. You got to go, and I hate to be that cavalier, but there are people who, and sometimes it's the top level person. They got you to 100 people, but they don't understand what it takes to get you 200 people, or they got you to $1 million in revenue, but they have no idea what it takes to get you to $10 million in revenue. And that is difficult because those people have their whole identity is wrapped up in the company, and they they cannot separate themselves from the business. And those are the worst bottlenecks because those people have to have a peer or a mentor or somebody who can tell them, look, like, you you you're it's not working, and they've got to be able to listen to that person. I've seen it a couple of times where that person had to step aside for us to, like, take that next step. And I've worked side by side with people. I've become the boss of people that were my senior person because that transition, that they did not understand that things were moving and they continued to stay stationary. And, at some point in our business, we are a revenue generating machine. And you've got to understand, like, what I'm doing operationally has to be revenue generating. And, like, how am I turning these wheels to create revenue? Am I and are my wheels, turning enough to create the revenue like it should be? And some people never even understand there's a whole revenue side to what they do. And at some point, those people might need to move to a different seat, or there has to be a change. So those tend to be the bottlenecks as I see them. AI, like right now, is a scalable thing that if your processes are working, you can plug it in and it helps you extend laterally. But really, there are, like I said, glass ceilings that you won't break through unless you fix your processes and your organizational structure.
So you made some real good food for thought or insight right there. Because so often businesses are, I want to scale by X, or my efficiency, I want to increase by X. And what I think happens with people or organizations is when they say scale, you just assume or people assume that they're going to scale from 50 to 5,000 and the
Yep.
same stuff is going to work. Where
Right.
the planning needs to be, we're going to scale from 100. This scale is going to go from 100 to 200. And when we get to 175, we're going to reconvene in the same conversations, knowing that we plan on that ceiling and we're going to look at in the rearview mirror and say what was working and who was working, what is working and what is picking up velocity, and how many people or processes are a drag. And I think that's the problem with scaling conversations is
Yep.
they just think they're done.
Yep, yep. And I use the term velocity everywhere I go because velocity is not just speed, it also implies your process. And you have to know your process well enough to change direction because in business, it's never just a straight line. If it was, we'd all be, Elon Musk and driving around and, who knows what, but it's not. It's forwards and backwards and left and right and circles and turns and, a couple steps back and, God knows what kind of changes and turns and twists. And so you've got to know your processes really, really well.
Yeah, and I think that, and this has been going on for 25 years with me. Most companies don't document their process. So when new people come in, it's very tough to teach them if it's not been written down, because so often people are leaving the company as somebody's coming in and there's no documentation or cohesiveness of the process. So they just try to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's just fundamental reality. Let me see what else we've got on the docket here. Let's see how far we can get off the docket. How's that?
You had a great question. What
Yeah,
manual processes still surprise me?
yeah. Thank
This
you.
one hurt. This one hurts my heart, but billing.
Especially in your business.
I know it. Yes, this was one of my top three tasks in the first quarter, and we're working through that. But yeah, phew, billing. Ugh.
Is it billing and getting paid, or is it just getting an accurate bill out the door?
It's both. It is billing. It's getting an accurate bill out the door because there's a lot of like components to what we do, and we've made significant strides. We've got team members who've been working on that. We've made, like I said, significant strides in that. We've also like getting paid. We've got a couple like late payers, and so one of the things that I've done successfully in my past is that we periodically you have to raise your rates. It's just the cost of living, and so what I'm proposing in our leadership offsite coming up is that we raise our rates X%. But if you want to avoid a portion of that increase, you move to ACH, automatic payments.
Yeah.
And we'll just tell people like because we have people like paying, we have to hire another person. And to help us keep from having to hire more billing staff, this process allows us to do that. You save us money. And if you don't, then that increase goes to this person's salary, and it's just simple economics. And so and then we haven't historically charged late fees, but we got to start doing that because chasing people down to make them pay, um, it costs time and money, and that money's got to come from somewhere. So there's got to be you know a carrot and a stick.
Yeah. So billing and the AR still becomes quite the manual process.
Yes, we've done this successfully before in my career, and customers understand because they're in the same boat we are. I mean, we work with businesses, they have customers, they're our customer, and they, believe it or not, in my experience, they understand, and we're just being transparent about the process. And once we automate it, like make things simple for them, and they're making things simple for us, and we don't find people falling significantly behind. And ultimately, we're not having to hire staff to work in a billing department. When you look at waste in the traditional service model, waste is anything that a customer doesn't want to pay for. And they really don't want to pay us for people to sit in a billing department to have to bill them services that are rendered. So we don't really want to have to do that, charge them for that. So they help us out by like adopting this model that works. So
Well, I don't think it's that far fetched either. There's many things that I get a savings on 1 to 3% a month for going paperless. Why not another 1 to 3% for like paying on time?
yes, agree. So yeah, I love that question. It's great.
Uh,
It's a great one.
hey, you kind of led that question, but we'll go with it.
It was too good not to throw in there.
All right, here's number 8 because I'm on you're on one and I'm on another
All right.
guy. And I think that we can start landing the plane from this one.
All right.
What do you guys see between you and the CEO as your ideal state? It could be a design of your IT systems, 100% of your clients paying on time. That was a joke, but anyways.
That's
So
definitely
yeah,
part
what's
of it.
ideal state?
So ideal state is are we are in a we're building relationships with our partners. We are sitting down and we're talking to them about their business needs, and we're consulting and educating them on technology, their risk, and helping solve their solutions or solve their problems. Um, we're not, we're more proactive than reactive, and technology helps bridge that gap. When we're not using technology effective, we're more reactive than proactive. but we want to be able to provide the information our clients need to make decisions at the speed of business. And that speed is faster than it's ever been. And so that's really what great looks like for us. What that is tomorrow may be different than what it is next year. And we need to constantly have the bandwidth to evaluate what that is, talk to our clients and tell them about technology, educate them. And we really want to be the knowledge in technology for our clients.
So, as we land this plane, would you be open to follow up conversations with other leaders to explore modernization without disruption? And the reason I'm saying that is as we have more podcasts, I have quite a few that are not published yet. I get asked questions. Are you really creating a network opportunity? My answer is yes. That individual was a real thought leader, and I'm creating that environment with a podcast. So if you're open to that, let folks know, and then I'll put it in the description, website, socials, email address, things like that.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm always interested in talking to other leaders, whether they're in our space or whether they're in different organizations, different companies. I learn a lot from other leaders just talking to them and hearing what their pain points are and how they solve them, or just from, empathizing with what they're dealing with, because sometimes it puts in perspective what we're dealing with. And again, this is all about building relationships. And so I welcome that.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I have to say thank you for taking a lot of time. Again, to the audience, they're realizing that I try to keep these to 30 minutes, and then a good conversation breaks out, and we don't know where we're going to land the plane, as Mike Rowe says. It's just like, I don't know, we're going to go around again. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was incredibly insightful, and I sincerely mean that because I think we've given the audience some good insights into AI where it probably is not going to help out. But the other side is leadership and mindset. Any other final thoughts that you have?
Right. No, again, I know we mentioned earlier that modern supply chains, the chain attacks, don't break locks. They break down trust between systems. And again, just to bring it home, I think that's where MSPs help, because they not only secure systems, but they understand what's upstream and downstream in the supply chain, and they help consult with their partners to share that risk. And so we want to help be that partner for our clients. And that today's supply chain seems more at risk than it ever has been before with the number of threats out there. So my advice to everyone out there is just make sure you're doing your due diligence and properly investigate any AI solution before you jump in with both feet. Don't be another statistic.
That's a good point. Delano, I really appreciate your time. To the audience as well, thank you for hanging in there. I think you got some good insights.
You're listening to Supply Chain Unlocked. Get exclusive insights from industry leaders on overcoming